Yo, 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 what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the show. If you're new here, my name is Mitchell. In today's episode, I'll be talking about what's wrong is always available. And so I do these YouTube lives every Saturdays at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And if you guys do find this video content of value, you guys can show your appreciation by hitting the like button, subscribe, leaving a comment down below, and sharing it with your friends and family. And if you guys want to support me some more, there's links down below. So go check it out over there. That being said, I will be talking about a recap episode, which is happiness must come from you first. So the slide I will be talking about today is no one's coming to save you. And it has a correlation with our topic today of what's wrong is always available. Now, wherever you're currently at, you have to understand that whatever problems that you're having, that most of the time 80% don't care and 20% are glad that you have them. And most people tend to feed off of your misery. And for them, seeing someone in a lesser position makes them feel a lot better about themselves. And I call that the Jerry Springer effect. And the reason why, for those who know who Jerry Springer is, and the reason why I talk about this Jerry Springer effect is because if you have watched that show, basically you see a lot of people on stage that are miserable, and for you, that the viewer who's watching it, it comes a form of entertainment for you, and because you get to see how in reality how their life is so much worse. Now, it also helps you justify how you don't need to change. You're telling yourself, well, I don't really need to change, because if you think about it, look at how bad everybody else has it. And if everyone, especially from what you've seen, they're having it worse, damn, our life is actually kind of good. We don't really need to change anything about ourselves. And you don't want to get stuck in that mindset. And we're going to be talking a lot about mindset and how we shift and how we pivot things. But just that Jerry Springer effect, the fact that we're watching whatever you're consuming, it becomes a part of you. So be careful. Every day stand guard at the door of your mind. And you have to excuse me, I have some stuffy nose today, but we'll make do. All right. So that's the Jerry Springer effect. I caution you guys to be careful. And it's not just watching other people. It's not just watching Jerry Springer. I'm just talking about people in general. What's up, Tracy? How you doing? So really be careful. Every day stand guard at the door of your mind. Okay, Jim Rohn, go follow, watch him, and rest in peace, Jim Rohn. So helping yourself means being in a more collaborative mindset, a more collaborative state. The moment where you start comparing yourself to other people is a moment where you start to underappreciate what you actually have. You start comparing other people's fortunes and what you're lacking, and then you become the victim yourself. And that's something that you really, really want to be cautious of. And people with this kind of victim mentality usually comes from a place of, not always, but sometimes, most of the time, past traumas. So, and they're unintentionally or unconsciously seeking validations from other people so that they feel a little bit better about themselves. They really believe that life is against them. It's, things are happening to these people. Like, things are happening to me instead of for you. And so you want to also be cautious of being in that victim type of mindset, that state of not being collaborative within yourself. You're in a very competitive state, so you feel stuck. Okay, now let's talk about the main subject, which is what's wrong is always available. And it really depends on how you view things. And the first slide I'm going to be talking about is the power of shift. So the first shift is your focus. Your focus matters. It's important to direct your attention towards something that you want, because whatever you look at, that's what you're going to be focusing on. So whatever you're focusing on, that's your attention, and you want to direct your attention towards whatever you want. So it really depends on how you perceive reality. So if you always think that people are against you and think people are, out to get you, well, you're going to live in this very fearful state. So your life is basically going to be in a very fearful type of mindset, and you will never really break out of that. And so whatever you focus on expands. So really be cautious. So focus matters in this scenario. It's huge. So number 2 is the power of choice. You can always choose to focus on the negative things that are all, because if you think about it, it's always available. What's wrong is always available. I mean, have you ever wanted anything and then you were like, man, I could have done better? It's like, no. Or it's like you got 100% on your test and you're like, I feel like I didn't deserve this. Like it's like, oh, I could have done. It's like, 100% is pretty good. I mean, are you doubting your next time that you're not gonna get this 100%? Like what's going on? Or like, if someone likes you and you're like, yeah, but there's really not that much to like about me. And it's like, what are you really choosing to believe in? And whatever you actively look for, that's what you're gonna get. So you can choose to focus on the negative things. That's because that's always available. Or you can actively seek something more positive. Something, the cup is more half full instead of half empty, which usually requires you to be back into your center, because it's really, really easy to kind of lose yourself in that type of mindset, especially if you're not really feeling yourself. And so I always encourage others to shift not only your focus, but also your environment too, because that's what's kind of causing you to be in that type of mental state. Whatever is holding you down, whatever's kind of suppressing you, you want to be around people and things that lifts you. So, if you think about what you're doing, like when you're coming back home, what are you currently doing that is building you up so that you have a more easier, more better tomorrow? So are you sleeping better? Are you eating right? Are you exercising? Are you around the people that you enjoy? And are you doing the things that you do enjoy? Because if you don't enjoy any of those things, it's going to be really, really difficult to enjoy your life. And it's going to be even more difficult to have people that want to stick around you, because they're like, I don't want to be around you. You sound miserable all the time. It's like, and if you're not excited about your life, and I said this before, it's really, really difficult to have other people excited for you too. So you have to be there yourself first. And which is why that was my recap episode, which is no one's coming to save you. You have to save yourself. So first one was focus matters. Number 2 was the power of choice. The third one is gratitude. So gratitude is important because it basically contributes to your happiness, and it helps you improve whatever mental state you're in and your actual physical health. And it promotes a more positive emotions within yourself. Now, I'm not saying that you fake it till you make it, but doing it a little is better than being in a poor state all the time. You don't want to stay in the fake it till you make it, but you want to be honest with yourself. And so, like I said, it helps promote more positive emotions. And if you think about it like this, when those areas of your life is stronger, when your life is more centered, when you're less bothered and you're more excited about life, it will start to permeate through other areas of your life as well, which also helps you strengthen your relationship with others. It helps you manage stress. And so by practicing this certain gratitude that you have, just being appreciative of the things that you have, you can shift your focus on the positive areas of your life rather than focusing a lot on the negative. Because guess what? What's wrong is always available. All right? What's wrong is always available. And a lot of people, they tend to live in misery, and misery loves company. I'm going to talk about that later, but misery loves company, and people that likes the same thing tend to kind of like each other. So be careful falling into the trap of being around somebody. If you're that person because I was like that too. I always enjoy talking about, oh, how people went like this and this is what happened to me. And it's like, you know what? At the end of the day, I had the ability to change that. And so I did. And so I don't mind talking about it, but 95% of the time I should be focusing on a solution rather than just talking about it. And so that's what leaders do. Leaders that take lead into their own life. You could talk about your problems. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying that eventually you have to focus your shift. You have to shift this area of your brain to think, you know what? This kind of sucks, but how am I going to solve this so that it doesn't happen again? All right. So now, practicing gratitude, you're happier, you're more excited about life, all areas of your life. And just think about it. Just think about the time when you were really excited about life. Just think about the time where it felt like almost nothing could go wrong. Wasn't it a lot easier talking to a stranger? Like you were more excited. You had more energy, and you get to share that. You can't give what you don't have. And so if you're not excited about life and you're low in energy, how do you think you're going to be treating other people? And so by practicing this, it becomes effortless to even just talk to anybody. You know, being kind to other people feels effortless too. But when you're in a slump, you're tired, you're groggy, you just woke up, you're not excited about the things that you have to do, it gets increasingly difficult, right? And so think about your patience too. Did your patience increase? So imagine everything's right, everything's feeling right. You're in love. And when you're in love, does that person in front of you, you're driving, right? Does that person in front of you, does that car, are you impatient? Are you like honking at them the moment it turns green? Or you're like, you know, it's cool. I'm feeling good about myself. And so that's why I encourage people to start focusing more on the positive sides, not overly positive and where you faking it, but it's like, no, like look at everything as a cup half full rather than everything's half empty, and shifting the idea of everything is against you rather than things being for you. So think of it like a relationship that fell apart because you wanted it to work, but ultimately that person ended it. You guys aren't together. How are you viewing it? What's wrong is always available. So I could look at it as, damn, that person left me. She did this, she did that. But instead, I could look at it as a gift. If you look at it as a gift, you get to learn. You get to better yourself. And the next time you get into another relationship, well, guess what's going to happen? You will become a better person, a better partner. And that's your gift that you could share to other people. So the idea of what your life isn't always about what you're experiencing. It is the life that you're focusing on. So think about that for a second. It's not always about what you're experiencing. It's about what your life is focusing on. And funny enough, I'll tell you a story. So a long time ago, a friend and I, we used to play this video game online called MapleStory, okay? And for those who played MapleStory, basically you have a weapon and there's certain scrolls. There's certain scrolls that you could use. And depending on the percentage of the scroll, the lower the percentage, the stronger the item will become if there's a success. Now, there's only X amount of slots that you could actually use. And each time you use it, you lose a slot, whether it worked or it didn't work. And obviously, if you use this a lower percentage, you have less of a chance of it working. And so they had a specific scroll that was, I forgot what it's called, cursed. Anyways, it was a scroll that if it missed, you have a 50% chance, 50% chance of your item exploding, okay? Like meaning that it disappears out of your inventory. And inventory space, or real estate at this point, it was worth it's a good amount depending on what you had. And you know, we would we would like scroll something and we would lose an item, like, and we just look at each other like, yeah, we just lost like $10, and $10 at the time when you were a teenager felt like at least $100. Okay, and then we would just look at each other and just laugh and be like, hey, look, we just got more inventory space, right? And whereas other people would be like, damn, you just lost $10. I was like, yeah, we just got inventory space. And fast forward, there was a time that we we got hacked. Okay, we lost our account. Someone hacked into us. They took our information and like they stole all our items. And we just looked at each other like, hey, at least our levels didn't go down, right? Like they could have just jumped off and like lose all of our levels or percentages that we gained, so like took so long to gain. But we just looked at it, and you know, they helped create space for us. And you're like, yeah, it was funny. It still sucked, the fact that we lost everything. But you know, we like to and you know what's funny though? We never even think about like what's wrong was always available. Like, you know, it wasn't even an idea at the time. We were just looking at each other like, hey, we just created more space, more inventory for us, right? We have more things that we could pick up now. And so like that was a very fun time, and that was a very good time that we had, because that helped me kind of encourage myself. I was like, you know what, it is right. Like you could look at it as you got hacked and you should have protected yourself a little bit better and things like that. But ultimately we had a great time. I mean, we don't play that game anymore and stuff, but it was fun. It was a great time. And you know, you might not always remember what someone says, but you could always remember how they made you feel. And at that time I felt great. I was like, shit, they should hack me some more. Now obviously, you know, we took care of that. But anyways, let's move on to the second slide, which is just being true to yourself, being honest. Excuse me, let me take some water first. So being true to yourself, and it's not about always staying only positive, okay? It's about being authentic. And so where is your authentic self? Where do you live emotionally? What's up, Crystal? It's, you know, where's your authentic self? Because it's not always about, oh damn, I have to go outside and I have to be excited about life and I have to be happy. And you know, to some degree it does work, but I still encourage you to be honest with yourself and where you're at currently. So be authentic, be where you're at. So where do you live emotionally most of the time? And what's that story that you're constantly telling yourself? What is that? What are you telling yourself? Whether that story is accurate or not, if you tell yourself enough times of that same story, eventually it will become real. Here's an example. When I was younger, I would look at, believe it or not, okay, a lot of people feel like this too, but you know, they would look at someone and be like, oh my God, that person's way out of my league. For example, oh, she's too pretty. Why would she ever want to date a guy like me? You constantly tell yourself that. Guess what's gonna happen? You will never get somebody like that. Especially when it comes down to creating attraction, that is zero confidence, and that's the number one most attractive thing to a woman is confidence. Imagine that. Imagine you're like, oh damn, she would never date a guy like me, and then you go and approach her. Okay, at least you tried, but you go and approach her. Imagine that type of energy you have. Very low. You're unenthusiastic, if that's even a word. Yeah, you know, fun. You're like this energy vampire. No one wants to be around you. So really, really be careful. What's that story that you constantly tell yourself? So be careful, because if you tell yourself enough time of that same story, it will become real, whether it's accurate or not. So what do you feel most of your days? Because if you think about it like this, thoughts create emotions. Emotions is what kind of creates this feeling, and feelings is what drives a certain behavior. So if you're in this weird cycle where you're constantly telling yourself or creating these thoughts, oh, I'm not good enough, And if you're thinking about, oh, I'm not good enough, you're gonna feel like shit. You're gonna be like, well, I don't deserve any better, so what's the point? Why try? And so that's why most people get stuck in a situation where they play not to lose rather than play to win. And that's a big difference. Most people be like, well, if I don't play the game, I can't lose. If I don't give it a shot, I can't lose. I can't get shot down. But believe it or not, most women, okay, if guys out there, most women want to be approached. But most guys out there are kind of like, well, I don't want to get turned down. If I get turned down, it's embarrassing. I was like, dude, what's the worst thing that could happen if you get turned down? Okay. She would be like, damn, at least someone thought I was pretty today. You know? Number one most attractive thing or male characteristic is, you know, in masculine energy to a feminine woman is confidence. So whatever you're creating in your head, okay, got to be careful. Moving forward. Now, if you constantly find yourself pissed off and you constantly find yourself being upset, that is where you're going to be living most of your time. And think about what happens when life pressures you. I forgot who said this, but just think about what happens when life pressures you. Okay, I don't have an orange, but imagine I have an orange. Okay, I have this orange. What happens when you squeeze an orange? What happens? You get orange juice. So think about it in this perspective of what happens when life pressures you. And if you're always in this constant state of being miserable and you're upset and life pressures you, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to get a very miserable, unhappy person. And when you squeeze that person, when life pressures you, you get a lot of hate, you get a lot of anger, you get a lot of bitterness, you get a lot of resentment. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel those feelings and that feelings are not valid. What I am saying is how you respond and how you react are two different things. And that is how life is going to judge you. And that is where people are going to judge you and whether or not they want to be around you or not. Now, you can argue that I don't need anybody. I don't want anybody. I could worry about myself. But the reality is we all need each other to build each other up. You can't do everything by yourself. So eventually you're going to need some sort of help. Whether you need someone to be a sounding board or maybe just having a good relationship with somebody. You can't do everything alone. And so it's not about being like, oh yeah, I don't need this and I don't need that. I could just do everything myself. But it's just really about, well, okay, if I am experiencing a lot of hate and anger and a lot of bitterness, and I am this miserable, unhappy person, how am I going to change that? Because I don't want to be miserable anymore. Because a lot of people, they get stuck in this emotion and they stay there. They don't gravitate towards something like a solution. It's not even an idea for them because they're stuck in their own idea of a certain emotion. And remember, those thoughts create emotions. Emotion drives feelings, and feeling is what like creates a certain behavior that you have. If you find yourself in that situation constantly all the time and you're telling yourself the story, that's where you're gonna live until you change it. And so misery loves company. People that like the same thing tend to like each other. And so if you're constantly around people that's miserable and you're in this mindset where you're like, well, I can't change this. Well, what can you really change? If you're like, well, I'm stuck, but I want help, Mitchell. I'm stuck. I'm around miserable people, and it's very difficult to change my mindset because of that. Well, if you can't change your mindset, at the very least, start by changing your environment. What does it mean? It means that maybe you step away from certain people. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to cut them off. You just need to give yourself enough space and distance so that you could go back to your center. Plenty of times I lose my center, okay? And it happens to the best of us because we're human and we're creatures of emotions. And me being a masculine guy, I have to worry about, well, how am I going to get back into my center once that does happen? Because shit, when life hit, when shit hits the fan sometimes, I'm like, well, Mitchell, you have to take a step back. You have to see it from their perspective. So by practicing that gratitude, by having empathy, it allows me to see it from their perspective, whereas I'm not just focusing on what I'm feeling. And so that will help me to end suffering by focusing not just on myself, but understanding where they're coming from too as well, so that I could have an appreciation rather than an expectation. So complaining won't get you anywhere. Okay, it will help. It might feel better. It creates an illusion. Okay, and that's one thing I want to talk about too. It's people that complain a lot. Okay, do you complain, Mitchell? Absolutely. Hell yeah. Does it feel better? 100%. But if I don't do anything about that complaining, guess what's gonna happen? I'm gonna be stuck there. Complaining creates this problem in your head that if you talk about it, it feels like you've done something, but you haven't done anything. Until you actually apply it, that's when it becomes a solution. And most people stay and they complain and they don't do anything about it. And then one day they just like bottle everything up and everything just explodes. It's like, well, that's unhealthy. And so you gotta understand, okay? Complain, but find a solution. Be solution oriented. So if you think about it in this perspective too, and I want you to think about this. When was the last time that you complained yourself out of a problem that did not come up again? You complain. Bitch did this, motherfucker did that, and then what? You didn't do anything. Did that problem come up again? Think about a job, okay? You complain maybe about a coworker or something. You complain. They don't do anything about it. You're not doing anything about it. So guess what's going to happen again? It happens again, okay? And at that point, that's insanity. It's on you, okay? First time might not be your fault. Second time is, okay? You gotta take personal responsibility and accountability. And so, like I said, complaining doesn't solve anything, okay? And you can't complain yourself out of a problem until you do something about it. So if you find yourself, if you want to find yourself successful, if you want to be successful in this area of your life, you must follow someone who's already kind of done it, okay? So whoever has done it, you see them as like, wow, okay, maybe this person kind of at least have some sort of answer. Well, start following their steps. Understand it from their perspective, what they did, so that you could become more successful yourself. And if you're not happy with where you're at currently, whether it's your emotional state, your physical state, guess what you could do? You can move. That's the beauty of life. You're not a tree. You can move. All right. I think this is what, number 3. Slide number 3, which is happiness. And it's about happiness, but happiness is not a destination, okay? So when you treat happiness as a destination, you risk becoming overly focused on achieving a specific external goal. External, that's the key word, okay? External goal, so that you can feel happy, which more often than not will lead to disappointment and a lot of dissatisfaction. You're just not happy. You're like, ugh. And it will cause you to have this constant feeling of being not good enough, of inadequacy, which is one of our primary fears anyways. Our primary fear is fear that we're not going to be loved. And our second fear is our fear of inadequacy, that we're not good enough. And so if we work on those two areas of our life internally, we no longer really need to seek out those validations from other people so that we could justify how we feel about ourselves. That's very important, because now your happiness is no longer dependent on what other people is feeding you, because it's great when other people is praising you, but what happens when they're not? What happens when no one's around? How are you going to operate if you don't have that feedback so you can feel good about yourself? Well, you have to rely on yourself. You can't rely on everybody all the time. Most of the time, you're going to be with yourself and your own thoughts. But nowadays, we have this great technology called a smartphone where we could distract ourselves so much that we numb ourselves into thinking that everything's great. It's like this, what they call it, the dopamine spikes. It's You're not really doing yourself a favor because you're not really doing anything. You have to go out there and put in the action. So whether it's mentally, whether it's physically, like those are all important things. Now, when you treat happiness as a destination, you risk, like I said, you risk becoming overly focused, and you try to achieve this external goal to be happy, leaving you kind of always wanting more. And I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting more, but then you no longer compare yourself to yesterday, you're comparing yourself to other people. And now when you're comparing yourself to other people, whether they're giving you the validation or not, or you're comparing yourself like, damn, how come I do the exact same thing and they always seem to be like 2-3 steps ahead of me, or a step ahead of me? I don't get it. And it's like, well, look at where you were at and look at where you're currently at now. And that's the comparison I want you guys to compare yourself so that you could become better. You could become better. And it's not a linear movement neither. It goes up and down. It's just like, think of it as like a weight loss journey. You don't lose weight every single week. And especially if you're a woman, you have hormone, everything changes. Maybe you ate something that's high in sodium and you retain more water. And so when you stepped on a scale, you were like, damn, what the fuck? How come I didn't lose any weight? And then 2 weeks later, you're like, damn, I lost 3 pounds. It's like, how did that happen? It's like, well, things, it doesn't work linearly, and you don't lose weight every single week unless you just absolutely don't eat. And that's not what I'm encouraging. Anyways, what I am saying is it's not linear, okay? It's not linear, and it goes up and down. You just have to be consistent. Be consistent. And constantly challenging yourself and comparing yourself to yesterday. Main thing now is, when you no longer seek validation from other people, outside sources, external sources, you're no longer dependent on that happiness. Because if you are, and you need the validation, and you need people praising you so that you can feel good about yourself, like I said, from those external validations, happiness becomes this moving target. And when they don't give you exactly what you want, you're gonna be unhappy. And that's not where happiness lies. That is not where happiness lies. And so it's no longer with you. And so that's why I'm saying that you have to find it within yourself internally, rather than an external source. And an external source might sound like, or look like, well, when I find this person, then I will be happy. When I make this much money, then I will be happy. Like, okay, say for example, someone's making 50K, and then now they're making 100K. They're like, well, I won't be happy until I'm making 200. And then once they hit 200, it's like, when is enough? When is enough? Because once you get to that point, it's like, once I become a millionaire, then what? 1,000,001, 2,000,000, 4, 10, 20, 30. When is enough? When is enough? And so that's still very, very much external validation. Okay, external sources. So when I have this, then I'll be happy. When I buy this house and then I have this, then I'll be happy. But instead, look at what you're currently at. Live in the present. By living in the present, you get to practice gratitude. And if you're not there, you get to take a step back. Because most of the time, a lot of people, they like to live either in the future, way too ahead in the future, or to live in the past. Think about that person that you know that won't let go of high school. You know what I'm saying? That won't let go. Damn, high school back in the day, I was so fit. Yeah, but you're not now. So what you gonna do about it? Okay? Or damn, I used to get all these girls. Now, you know. Okay, what are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? And so it will never be enough. Okay? So be careful. Living in a moment, living presently, that's where things could happen. That's where things could change. Things change in the present so that your future could change. So many people are doing the best though. They're doing the best to try to believe that this happiness is their destination, where, oh, once I arrive here, then I'll be happy, which, it's, first of all, it's not real. It does not exist. You don't arrive to a happy place and you're happy. It's where you live most of the time. Like, happiness is a temporary state. Things have to go up and down in order for you to know what being excited is and know what being happy is. Imagine playing a video game that's, you're on God mode. No one can touch you. You have unlimited resources. It's not going to be a very fun game. It's not going to be very exciting. You just walk around. You could look at that enemy and they disappear. It's like, that's no fun. So it doesn't exist, okay? Happiness being a destination does not exist. At least not what most people imagine it to be. So the quest itself, you yourself as a person, the quest itself, and the fact that you have not achieved it becomes a source of misery. You're like, damn, how come I'm not happy? Why am I not like, well, what are you currently doing? And once you are doing it, you're not going to be there and stay there. So then now you get stuck where you're living between the gap of imagination and reality. It creates a lot of pain. And when you can, my coach always said, you can ignore reality, but you cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. Most people have this imagination of, oh, this is what love is out there. And it's like, well, once they find that person, they never worked on themselves. They never learned how to communicate. They had some past traumas and they're just hoping someone is willing to settle. And, also what I would like to mention, a little side note, is that social media has done its job to help validate a lot of poor behaviors of other people just because they're hot. And it's like, think about it in this perspective. No matter how hot you are, single guy, imagine I'm a single guy. No matter how hot she is, to me, I'm like, you know what? The juice just ain't worth the squeeze. I don't want to be a part of that. But one saying no, but 10, 20 other guys are willing to settle for that just because. And so what do you think that's going to do? What do you think that's going to encourage her? Is going to be like, damn, if Mitchell don't want me, I at least have another 19 to 20 guys that will be more than happy to deal with my nonsense. And so what does that tell you? There's a lot of weak ass men out there that's willing to settle down to be this punching bag of a guy, aka beta male, where he's willing to do whatever it takes so that he could keep her. And it's like, I've seen a lot of relationships where the guy is like this punching bag, where the woman does not respect him. And respect needs to be earned, okay? And it's just, I don't think that guy is happy. Me personally, I don't think he's happy. He says he is. I can see it in his actions. Who am I to judge? I don't, or to even put any input, because that's not my life. And they're not asking me for advice. So I remain silent. Now, like I said, people do a lot of tactics. They fake this certain happiness and they use outside things, outside sources to make themselves feel a little bit more validated. Like, going out there and buying like expensive clothes, things that they can't afford so that they could impress people that don't really care or know much about them. And it's like, well, if that's how you want to live, but you're always going to find yourself unpleasant and unhappy. And to me, that's not what it is. It's about doing the things that you love and being with the people you enjoy being around. To me, that's where happiness lies. And am I able to do it in solitude without being dependent? I love being in solitude. I get to think. I get to create for myself, and I get to learn more about myself. Especially if I'm upset about certain things. Venting does help. Very, very feminine. Talking about things is very feminine. but then it helps me create this stability for myself so that I could become more grounded, more centered later. So if you find yourself off centered, how quickly can you get back into your center so that your life becomes more grounded and you're not just this jack in a box that just yells and screams anytime something doesn't happen for you? So happiness is not a destination, it's a temporary state. You can't be happy all the time, just as long as you're happy most of the time. So the question you might want to ask yourself is, what were your current emotions I felt this week? What was your feeling? How do you feel most of the time this week? And I can tell you mine. I was annoyed, I was upset. But then I also get to look at it like, well, was I able to do all the things that I enjoyed? And I said yes. And was I able to stay consistent with what I've always wanted to do? And the answer is yes. And so by practicing that, me being annoyed, I'm not invalidating those feelings because that's how I felt. But the main thing is, well, how do I feel less annoyed? And how do I feel less pissed off? How? And that's my solution. That's first of all, that's me being aware. And then number two, it's how am I going to solve that? How am I going to solve that? So last slide is, well, this is my last slide. So the topic of today is, to go back to, is what's wrong is always available. And so is what's right. And, I was very inspired by Tony Robbins. So most of this is from him anyways, Tony Robbins, and my coach Corey Wayne. And so Tony Robbins, he talked about it's the ability to pivot. It's the ability to pivot. To change the direction of your attention towards the solution and away from the problem. It doesn't mean you ignore the problem, it's just away from it. You don't ignore it, you're just away from it. How do I find a solution for this? So that, and I'm steering away from the problem so that when I have a solution, the problem just kind of goes away a little bit. You'll solve problem by staying flexible. By being flexible enough to change. Being able to adapt, to experiment, and to be playful, and to try something new. Try something new. Otherwise, insanity. You already know it. Sometimes you have to put your ego to the side and humble yourself. If you don't humble yourself, you will be humbled. And so you got to take a step back. Sometimes you're not always right. I'm not always right. And sometimes I will need to be humbled. Mitchell, shut the fuck up. Listen. All right, you got it. What I need to learn? Okay, maybe you're right. Maybe you have something that I don't know, or maybe I'm just blindsided because I'm too caught up of what I felt at the moment, which was a lot of annoying and being upset and being pissed off. How? What do you have so that I could find a solution? So now it becomes increasingly difficult when emotions are at play though, okay? So when I was upset, when I was angry and bitter about certain things, and I was like, man, life isn't the way I want it and I have to change. Well, you know what? Life would be boring if I didn't have that. If I didn't have those situations coming to me with those certain challenges. So I was like, all right, you know what? Challenge accepted. Challenge accepted. How am I going to overcome this challenge? Which is part of masculine energy anyways. Overcoming challenges, breaking through barriers, remaining in your center. So that the more resilient you become, the more attractive you are. So I see that as a gift. And if I could just be a 1% better every single time, that will make me a much better person to be around. That's how I see it. So to me, those are gifts, even though it's very annoying. Comes as gifts, okay? Not always the gift that you want, and sometimes it could be overwhelming, but it's still a gift, depending on how you view it. What's wrong is always available, so it's what's right. So, but now, and he also talked about, in order to end suffering, and I said this before earlier in a episode, you must trade your expectations for appreciation. And it doesn't necessarily mean you always have to be, like I said, around that person all the time. Like, create enough space so that you can enjoy your peace. That's it. Create enough space. Now, there's a caveat though. If that person is constantly giving you a lot of bitterness, they're constantly arguing with you, like, you really have to understand, like, where do I draw the line to protect my peace at this point? How do I do that? And then you have to look at that person's character. What's that person's character like? Are they malicious? Are things have to be their way? Otherwise, they won't be happy. What are they currently doing? Are they controlling you so that do you have a certain type of freedom? What are they currently showing you? You can always judge a person based on what they do, not what they say. So if they're constantly coming to you and they're bombarding you, and if you fail to lead your own life, best believe they're gonna come in and try to take control of yours. You're no longer leading your life, they're controlling yours. So I encourage you to take a lead into your life, to start believing in yourself and start to understand, well, you know what? Maybe I'm not fully prepared, but taking the first step will allow you to. And so create that space so that you can enjoy your peace. But allow the time and distance and let the appreciation settle in, because I'm pretty sure they have taught you something one way or another. So if you find yourself in this mess, I encourage you to take a step back to see where you're currently at emotionally and how you're going to change that feeling so that you have a different type of behavior, so that you don't have this constant cycle of misery. Because if you want to become a leader of your own life, you must focus on the solution and steer away from the problem. That being said, guys, that is today's show. I'm going to be going over the summary, and that will be it for today. So if you guys have any questions, write it down below and I'll read it after the summary. All right. So slide number 1 was the power of shift. It is important of directing your attention towards what you see. What you see, your focus shapes your perception of reality. What you see, what you believe in, what you constantly tell yourself. If you tell yourself enough, it's going to be true, whether it's accurate or not. Number 2 is the power of choice. Power of choice. So you can always choose to focus on the negative things that are always available, or you can actively seek the positive of a situation. Cup half full. Oh, I created more inventory space. That's cool. Gratitude. Okay. And being true to yourself. Now, happiness is not a destination. It's a temporary state. When you treat happiness as a destination, you risk becoming overly focused and trying to achieve a specific external goal to feel happy, leaving you kind of always wanting more. When I find a girlfriend, when I find this partner, when I make this much money, then I will be happy. It's like, no, yeah, you have to be excited about your life first. Because if you're not, it's going to be really difficult to have other people excited for you and with you. And lastly, so is what's right, which is my last slide. You got to change the direction of your attention towards a solution and away from the problem. You solve problem by staying flexible and being flexible enough to change, to adapt, to experiment, and to be playful, and to try something new. That is how you're going to be able to create a change. So unless you're able to make a pivot, your life is going to stay the same consistently. So like I said, I encourage you guys, if you guys do feel stuck, try something out, shift it. Even if it means like faking it in the beginning, if you're like, damn, life always happening to me, I'm always pissed off and upset, try to think about a situation that might turn that around and see how you feel after that. That being said, guys, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I appreciate everyone that has watched this. See Tracy and Crystal always being here. So thank you for your time, and I will not be here next week. I won't be here next week. I'll be at a gaming tournament. But I hope you guys enjoy your Valentine's Day, And if not, enjoy your weekend. That being said, I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on 2 weeks. About 2 weeks. All right, peace. Bye.